It was supposed to be an ordinary Saturday morning. Juniper had just poured her coffee, sunlight slipping through the blinds in thin gold lines, when her phone buzzed. She didn't even look at the caller ID, not until she heard the voice. "Ms. Hayes? This is Officer Blake. We have your children." The coffee mug slid out of her hand and shattered across the tiles. She didn't feel it leave her fingers. Didn't feel the splash of hot liquid on her feet. All she heard was the ringing in her ears. My children. Lily and Theo. What happened? They were found alone on the East End side of the city. Passerby called it in. You need to come to the precinct immediately. Juniper's knees nearly buckled. Her hands were shaking so violently she couldn't even grab her keys at first. The apartment suddenly felt too small, like the walls were folding in on her. She stumbled outside, flagged a taxi with a wild wave, and practically threw herself into the back seat. "Central Precinct," she gasped. "Please fast. Faster if you can." The driver didn't ask questions. The city blurred past in streaks of gray and cold winter light. Every red light felt like an attack. Every minute a lifetime. She kept replaying the officer's words. Wrong side of the city. Found alone. How was that even possible? They had been at her mother's house. They were supposed to be safe. By the time the taxi screeched to a stop, Juniper was already halfway out the door. She ran so hard her breath tore at her throat. And then she saw them. Lily's cheeks streaked with dried tears. Theo hugging himself, trembling so badly his little shoulders shook. They were sitting on a hard plastic bench, two small figures swallowed by the harsh fluorescent light. "Mommy!" They bolted toward her, crashing into her legs with enough force to nearly knock her over. Juniper wrapped her arms around them, pulling them to her chest like she could fuse them back into her body where they belonged. Officer Blake stepped forward, expression grim. "Ms. Hayes. This is being treated as a case of child endangerment." The words punched the air out of her lungs. "And 3 days later, something far worse happened. But to understand how we got here, you need to know what my family had been doing to me my entire life." People said Juniper was the responsible one. But in her family, that phrase had always been code for something else. The backup plan, the spare tire no one appreciated until something blew out. It started in childhood in small, almost invisible ways. When Eleanor decided Serena, the older sister, needed space to become a young lady, Serena got the larger bedroom, sunny with a balcony view of the maple trees. Juniper got the smaller room facing the alley, with a window that barely opened. Juniper was 11. Serena was 14. The decision was final before Juniper even knew it was being discussed. Then came the scholarship fund. Juniper had earned it, an academic award she worked for all year. But at the last moment, Eleanor announced the money was being temporarily redirected to help Serena join a summer dance program. "Family sacrifices, Juniper," her mother said, as if those 3 words erased the sting. Family sacrifices, repeated so often it became the soundtrack of Juniper's childhood. And she always seemed to be the only one sacrificing. By the time she reached adulthood, Juniper had built a life far away from all that. A steady job as a financial analyst, a quiet riverside apartment where the floors didn't creak, and routines no one interrupted. She ran before sunrise, drank coffee on her balcony, and lit candles in the evenings. No one complained about her choices. No one rearranged her life. Except Serena. Even in adulthood, Serena treated Juniper like a built-in safety net. Last-minute babysitting demands. Cancelled plans. "Just a few hours, Junie. You know you're great with the kids." Those few hours always turned into entire weekends. But Lily and Theo, they were different. They were the only uncomplicated love Juniper had ever known. She tied Lily's shoelaces while Lily chattered about school friends. She warmed soup for Theo when he was sick and read stories until he fell asleep on her shoulder. They drew her pictures. Messy crayon hearts labeled Aunt Junie. With them she wasn't the backup plan. She was home. Still, Serena's demands piled up. Always urgent, always expected, always taken for granted. And year after year, The exhaustion seeped deeper. Not the physical tiredness. Juniper could handle that. It was the feeling of being used like a tool, picked up when needed, put away when not. But this year something in her finally broke. And when she said the word Serena never expected to hear, it set off a chain reaction that would destroy everything she'd built on my silence. The Thursday before everything unraveled, Juniper was sitting at her desk, rehearsing the opening lines of her presentation for the annual finance conference. It was the biggest event of her year. Months of preparation condensed into one critical morning. Her slides were polished. Her notes were highlighted. Her blazer was pressed and hanging by the door. She had exactly 1 hour before she needed to leave. That's when her phone rang. Serena. The name alone made Juniper's stomach tighten. She considered letting it go to voicemail, but old habits, obedient, ingrained, made her swipe to answer. Junie, I need you to take the kids tonight. No greeting. No explanation. No question. Just expectation. Juniper closed her eyes. Serena. I have my conference tomorrow. My car's already booked to pick me up at 7. I can't tonight. Was. Not silence, pressure. You're kidding, Serena snapped. You're actually saying no. Juniper straightened her shoulders. For years, she had said yes automatically, reflexively, even when it hurt. But today she felt something different, something firm, rooted. I'm saying no, she repeated, voice steady. I have plans I can't cancel. The intake of breath on the other end was sharp, venomous. You're selfish, Juniper. Completely selfish. I can't believe you'd leave me stranded like this. You know I have things to do. Important things. Important. As if Juniper's life didn't count. As if her accomplishments were hobbies, and Serena's whims were obligations carved in stone. For the first time, Juniper didn't fold. I'm sorry you're upset, she said carefully. But my answer is still no. Then she did the unthinkable. She ended the call first. She didn't chase. Didn't apologize. Didn't send a follow-up text trying to smooth the edges of Serena's temper. Instead, she placed her phone screen down and stared at the quiet apartment. Her heartbeat wouldn't settle. A cold prickle crept along her spine, like someone had opened a window she didn't know was there. That uneasy feeling stayed with her all the way into Saturday morning. Juniper brewed her coffee, opened her laptop, and clicked through her final conference slides. Everything should have felt normal. But the silence from Serena was too loud, too heavy. The kind of silence that comes before a storm. She didn't know it then, but across town, Serena was already proving she still had control. And the price would be paid by 2 innocent children who trusted the wrong person. While Juniper revised her presentation slides that morning, Serena was moving through her apartment like a storm with a single purpose. Escape clothes were shoved into a duffel bag. Makeup thrown into a pouch without closing the caps. A pair of heels tossed on top of everything. Serena wasn't thinking about Lily and Theo. Not their morning, not their safety, not even where they were actually going. She was thinking about herself, her weekend plans, and the fact that her sister had dared to say the one word Serena believed she'd earned immunity from. No. Are we going to Aunt June's? Lily asked as Serena hurriedly zipped the bag. Something like that, Serena muttered, barely glancing up. Theo clutched his small green dinosaur plush to his chest. He always held it tighter when something felt wrong. Today he was squeezing it so hard the seams strained. Serena scribbled an address on a scrap of junk mail. Juniper street name, misspelled, with no building number, no cross street, no apartment code. She didn't care. She wasn't planning to ride with them. She had somewhere else to be. Come on, she snapped, ushering them downstairs. Lily hesitated. Mom. Aren't you coming? I'll meet you there. Don't be dramatic. The taxi driver looked confused the second Serena pushed the kids inside. Ma'am, this address is incomplete, he said, holding the paper up. It's close enough. Just get them there. And before he could ask anything else, Serena shut the door and walked away. Her heels clicking as she headed toward her waiting weekend. Not once looking back. The ride was quiet. Lily stared out the window, trying to recognize buildings. Theo kept asking, is Aunt June there yet? But no one answered. The driver muttered to himself, checking his GPS, tapping the map, frowning. He circled the block twice before finally letting them out on the sidewalk of a busy street. Not dangerous, but definitely not where they belonged. "I think this is it," he said uncertainly. "This is the closest match I can find." He didn't wait. The taxi pulled away, leaving two small children standing in the cold wind, one holding his dinosaur, the other gripping her backpack straps until her fingers hurt. 20 minutes past. 20 long, terrifying minutes. People walked by. Cars honked. Lily's eyes filled with tears. Theo's lower lip trembled. Finally, a neighbor from the opposite side of the street noticed them. A woman carrying groceries who stopped, knelt and asked, "Sweethearts, where are your parents?" While that was happening miles away, Juniper sipped her coffee and practiced her talking points about quarterly projections, totally unaware of the disaster unfolding. While I was practicing talking points about quarterly projections, two children who loved me were standing on a cold sidewalk wondering why I wasn't there. And when the truth came out, everyone would have to choose a side. The police station felt colder after the children stopped crying. Lily sat beside Juniper, wrapped in her coat, while Theo curled against her side, clutching his dinosaur with both hands. Juniper kept one arm around each of them, grounding herself through their small, trembling bodies. Officer Blake approached with a clipboard, expression firm but not unkind. "Ms. Hayes, I need to start documenting everything. This is a serious incident." Juniper swallowed hard. "Serious?" That was one word for what Serena had done before she could answer. Her phone lit up on the table. "Serena." Juniper hesitated, but Officer Blake nodded. "Put it on speaker." Juniper tapped the button. "Where are my kids?" Serena screamed so loudly that even other officers glanced over. "I just got home and they're not here." "What did you do?" Juniper kept her voice steady. "Serena, they're safe. They were brought here by the police." "The police? Why?" Serena demanded. "I told the taxi where to take them." Juniper exhaled, tired down to her bones. "You wrote the wrong address. There was no building number. No apartment. You left them on the sidewalk. That is your fault." Serena shrieked. "If you hadn't bailed on me, if you hadn't been selfish, they wouldn't have been confused." Officer Blake stepped forward, his tone calm but unyielding. "Ma'am, this call is being documented as part of a child endangerment report. I need you to stop assigning blame and answer clearly. Did you put two minors in a taxi alone with an incomplete address?" There was a pause. A dangerous one. "I'm not answering your questions," Serena snapped. "Give my kids the phone. They shouldn't be talking to strangers." "They're with their aunt," Blake said. "And until we complete the assessment, they're not leaving her custody." Juniper watched as he wrote notes, long, steady lines across the clipboard. For the first time that morning, the truth settled in her chest with a heavy, irrevocable clarity. "If I stay silent now, I'm part of the danger." Minutes later, Miss Caldwell from CPS called. Her voice was measured, professional. "We're opening an assessment. I'll need statements from you and the children. And depending on the parents' cooperation, possibly temporary placement arrangements." Temporary placement. Juniper felt her heartbeat echo through her body. Then her phone rang again. This time marked Serena's ex Lily and Theo's father. His voice was tight, horrified. "Juniper, the police just called me. Is it true? The kids were found alone." "Yes," she said softly. "And it wasn't an accident." "Oh my God," he breathed. "Send me everything. Text, logs, timestamps. I'll be there as soon as I can." But no crisis in Juniper's life arrived alone. Minutes later, Eleanor called. "What did you do?" her mother demanded. "How could you do this to your sister? She's distraught." Juniper looked at Lily's small hand in hers. "I didn't do this to her," she said quietly. "She did it to them. The next 48 hours would split my family down the middle." And when the court documents were filed, Serena would finally understand that some lines, once crossed, can never be walked back. The real battle didn't start at the police station. It started the moment Juniper's phone began vibrating with messages from relatives who hadn't spoken to her in months. Eleanor led the charge, calling everyone she could think of: Aunt Marian, Uncle Ray, distant cousins who only showed up for holidays. And by evening, a full narrative had been constructed without Juniper saying a single word. Juniper is dramatic. Juniper overreacted. Juniper has always been jealous of Serena. Juniper hates being single and wants to ruin her sister's life. Juniper thinks she's better than everyone now that she has a fancy job. The messages came in like coordinated artillery. Why would you betray your own sister? Serena told us everything. Shame on you. You've always resented her, now it shows. Not one person asked what happened to Lily and Theo, but Mark did. And he didn't come alone. His attorney, Miss Foster, a sharp, composed woman with clipped speech and zero tolerance for nonsense, sat across from Juniper at her dining table. We're filing a petition for emergency custody, she explained. Given the severity of the incident, Mark has a strong case for immediate placement. This is no longer a family disagreement. This is a legal matter. Juniper nodded, the weight of it settling fully. Once the petition was filed, there would be no pretending nothing happened. No sweeping it under a rug. No family sacrifices to excuse Serena's cruelty. The papers were served the next morning. Juniper didn't hear Serena's reaction firsthand. She heard it when Serena called her, voice shaking with fury so raw it bordered on feral. How dare you do this to me? Serena hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done? You're trying to take my children, because you're lonely and miserable and... Juniper didn't flinch. Not anymore. You did this to yourself, she said softly, a beat of stunned silence. Then screaming, Juniper didn't respond. She didn't explain. She didn't soothe. She didn't try to fix it a mess. Foster's instructions echoed in her mind. Don't engage anymore. Everything goes through legal channels. She will weaponize every word you give her. So Juniper hung up, and in that moment, she felt something shift deep inside her. A shedding of an old skin. The people-pleasing Juniper, the apologizing Juniper, the bending until she broke Juniper. She was gone. 3 days after those children were found crying on a sidewalk, we all walked into a courtroom. And what Serena's lawyer tried to sell as one mistake was about to be exposed as something much darker. The courthouse was cold, echoing with every step across polished marble floors. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, catching the golden sheen of the wood paneling in the main courtroom. Juniper sat stiff-backed on the edge of the spectator bench, Lily curled into her side, Theo gripping her hand. The air smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant, but beneath it lingered tension sharp enough to taste. Serena entered like a carefully rehearsed scene. Hair curled just so, soft makeup enhancing her features, a neatly folded tissue poised on her lap as if she were already in mid-drama. Her posture radiated control, calmness, devotion, the devoted mother archetype. It was the performance she had perfected over a lifetime of manipulation. Her attorney stood and began the opening remarks, voice smooth, rehearsed. Your Honor, this is about truth. The truth is that Ms. Hayes is bitter, childless, and jealous. She has a history of resentment toward her sister, and she's using this incident to interfere with a loving mother's relationship with her children. Juniper stayed quiet, letting the words hit, letting the room feel their weight, but not letting them touch her. She had rehearsed her own lines in her mind, but nothing prepared her for the magnitude of the spectacle Serena could summon with a tissue and a few well-timed sobs. Officer Blake was first to testify. He described the taxi ride, the children left on the sidewalk for over 20 minutes, the fear etched into their small faces, and the precise way he intervened. Every detail, meticulously documented, was laid bare. The officer's calm authority cut through the polished courtroom theatrics, and Juniper saw some of the faces shift. Relatives who had assumed she was dramatic, watching the stark truth in action. Next came Miss Caldwell from CPS, her report revealing the pattern. Prior incidents of neglect, multiple school calls, and Lily's own whispered fears of being left alone. The documents were read aloud, undeniable evidence printed and filed. The weight of years of subtle harm unfolded in a few stark pages. Then it was Juniper's turn. She took the stand with a straight back and steady gaze. Her voice, clear and unwavering, filled the courtroom. I chose safety over enabling dangerous behavior. I didn't act out of jealousy. I acted to protect them. She described the morning, Serena's rushed escape, and the children's terror. Without tears, without embellishment, just facts. Her presence alone seemed to puncture the theater Serena had been performing. Serena's own testimony began to crumble under Ms. Foster's precise, relentless cross-examination. Every inconsistency exposed. Every excuse traced back to inattention or selfishness. The tissue dropped. The soft voice cracked. The image of the perfect mother shattered before the courtroom's eyes. Judge Keaton listened silently, stone-carved expression unreadable, absorbing every word and every piece of evidence. When the ruling came, it was decisive. Primary custody awarded to Mark, with supervised visitation only. The gavel echoed like thunder in Juniper's chest and the hallway afterward. Serena collapsed, face streaked, voice raw. "You ruined my life," she screamed. Juniper, holding Lily and Theo close, met her gaze calmly. "You nearly ruined theirs." For the first time in her life, Serena couldn't rewrite the story. And I realized something that would change everything going forward. I wasn't the family shadow anymore. I was the one who finally chose the children over keeping the peace. The weeks after the ruling settled into a rhythm that felt almost miraculous. Mark established a structured home for Lily and Theo. Homework charts, nightly dinners at 6, and a bedtime routine that no longer revolved around fear or uncertainty. The children, once haunted by nightmares and the chill of hallway lights left burning through the night, began to relax. Lily's laughter returned in bursts between homework assignments, and Theo slept soundly, clutching his dinosaur without hesitation. Juniper, once invisible in her own family, found a place in this new household. Helen and George, Mark's parents, welcomed her with warmth, offering quiet support and acknowledgement for the role she had played. At work, Ms. Ramirez, her boss, expressed pride and understanding, giving Juniper space to navigate both professional responsibilities and personal recovery without judgment. Serena, predictably, maintained only a superficial presence during supervised visits. Therapy notes detailed her emotional detachment, the smiles that never reached her eyes, the hurried departures, the whispers of resentment thinly veiled by civility. Juniper observed, detached herself. Finally free from the burden of rescuing someone unwilling to be helped, acceptance grew quietly in her chest. She had lost a family that demanded silence and compliance, but she had gained something steadier. Children who trusted her, a home that respected boundaries, and a life unshackled from manipulation. Lily and Theo, once trembling on a sidewalk, could finally exhale. They could finally feel safe, sitting on the riverside balcony one evening. Juniper reflected on the chain of events that had started with a single word. No. It had been terrifying, liberating, and ultimately life-saving. Looking back, everything shifted the moment I said no. Serena sent the kids in a taxi. The driver got the wrong side of the city. And 3 days later came the call that unraveled her story completely. But protecting Lily and Theo was worth every fracture that followed. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts below and subscribe so you don't miss what happens when family loyalty becomes dangerous, and someone finally chooses truth over tradition.